Okay. I was about to say the little voice wasn't talking. All right, Ori, what is your running story?
Okay. Well, let's see. Back in like 2019-ish, I'd say like I started just running for like exercise, and it was like very much just like one terrible mile and then two terrible miles and always the same route. And I was married at the time. And then sort of in 2020, things like I started doing a little bit more running maybe, but hadn't quite like unlocked how to enjoy running yet.
Oh,
And
nice.
then right around sort of like when marriage issues became like insurmountable,
Hmm.
then I just kind of like started going on more runs. And um, like it took a long time for me to figure out how to break that like 2 mile barrier, because
Yeah.
just like doing the same route, then you're always like, okay, I know exactly how far I know I'm exactly at 1 mile, and I still have to do like all the way back, and like
Yeah.
just hated it every time. And then one day I'm just like, you know what, I'm just gonna go run this route, and
Mm.
maybe it's 3 miles, maybe it's 4 miles, something like that, and that felt so much better. And then one night it was just like, okay, I'm just gonna go run, and like it ended up getting rained on and everything like that, and I'm just like, this is great, like and I was enjoying it. um yeah, and then like 2021, then, or like 2020, 2021 is like when I moved out, and then just sort of started doing more running for exercise. And then also that year did Ragbri, which is
Oh, yeah.
the bike ride across Iowa. um and after doing that, I was like, okay, I think actually I could do like a half marathon. So like officially signed up for a half marathon in September, Chicago half marathon. Did that, and then it was like, okay, well, like what's next, I guess. And then just kept running farther, and yeah, 2022 did a couple marathons, and then this last year um, did the Chicago marathon, and then like the last outstanding,
Hmm.
which I tapped out at like 50 miles. Um, yeah,
Nice. That's a good little progression. It's a
yeah.
I think a normal, within like 3 years, you went from zero to ultra. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, and I think like a lot, I don't know, you see the like Instagram reels like where it's like endurance athletes, it's like linked to trauma and stuff like that. And I definitely feel like that was part of my story, was just like kind of going through this divorce, and like also in that process, like coming out as queer,
Hmm.
and still just like having a lot that I was trying to like prove to myself through running, and running
Yeah.
just felt like a good way to like, channel that energy.
Yeah.
um yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Obviously, I've been around the ultra running community for a really, really long time. And I think like you could probably be a runner, casual, even a marathon runner,
Mhm.
and be okay, but I
Yeah.
have yet to find a single person who runs ultra marathons that there's not something
Yeah.
there, that there's not something that's driving you
Right.
outside of that. So I mean, that's a lot to go on in a 3-year period. Um, how has running helped you through it? How has you're like an all-around endurance athlete. You do a bunch of stuff, you're bike riding and everything. How have you
Yeah.
used those outlets to kind of help you process both your own emotions and like coming out? I mean, that's terrifying.
Yeah. I don't know. I really do think like so much of what I was like having going on for me was just a lot of like um self-confidence issues, and um like not feeling good enough, not feeling like manly enough or something like that.
Hmm.
And like this year also came out as non-binary, gender fluid non-binary. And like a lot of that was just a shedding of things that were kind of holding me back, in a way
Hmm.
where like when I'm out running or cycling or ice climbing or anything like that, like none of that matters. Like you're just, I mean, you're there with your thoughts, but eventually like those thoughts just fade away.
Hmm.
And to me, well, at least for me, and it's very like meditative and like provides a lot of space for self-reflection and just like sorting out what's important to me. Um and yeah, I think just like feeling confident about um I think that's what's funny about running. It's like there's always people faster than you, and there's always people slower than you, and there's always
Mm-hmm.
people who can't run as far as you, and there's people who can run, 10 times as far as you, or whatever. But just like feeling good about where you're at and just like feeling confident about that, and good enough to be doing what you're doing. I think like that's what helped me a lot.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I don't know why it's like just clicking in my head because I was listening to some other podcast and it's like a parallel to this. And it's specifically they were talking about, being queer and coming out, how that's supposed to be like an end game. Like, oh, you've come
Mm,
out.
right.
Okay. And then there's no space in society. And then we don't give ourselves space to be like, okay, there's probably more about my identity I may not know yet.
Yeah.
Like not to say like you're just now discovering, but you're just now really letting yourself to lean
Yeah.
into it. What else are you not allowing yourself
Right.
to lean into? And I feel like there's some sort of parallel there between people and runners and their identity
Yeah.
as runners. Especially I coach a lot of older athletes and people even that like they're not at their peak athleticism. They're not
Right.
25 years old, whatever.
Mhm.
They're not going to hit those PRs and leaning into the athlete that they are today
Mhm.
and being okay and like learning who that is. And even for me right now, like I'm a postpartum runner after two kids. I am
Mhm.
not the same athlete I was
Right.
2.5 years ago. And
Right.
so like that's interesting for you to be on like two of the same journeys at one time. Like you're learning who you are as an athlete and kind of as a person, this identity. And there's not an end game to it, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, and I've told people many times that like, of the three identities that I guess I most embody, like queer, gender fluid, and
Mhm,
a runner,
mhm.
coming out as a runner was kind of the hardest one. It was one of those things where like, I had done a half marathon and was running like most days, and still was just like, but like I'm not a runner. Like
Yeah,
runners
yeah,
are
yeah,
those other
yeah.
people's like,
Yeah, I'm just doing this.
yeah, yeah, like I enjoy running, but it's like that's not who I am. And then it was I was in Rogers Park. I lived there for like 9 months, and it's like I was running with a partner, and she was always like, you just say you're a runner, just like stop. Just like admit it. And it's like December and it's snowing, and I'm in like full like outdoor running gear with like shoes specially made for like running on ice and stuff, and I'm like, this is stupid. Like I think I'm a runner. Like um
Coming out as a
yeah.
runner. That's
Yeah.
amazing. Well, it is something people struggle with. Even like I talk to people all the time about this, and I have people that I coach, and they've hired a coach to help them run, but still have trouble acknowledging themselves as an athlete.
Hmm.
And it's like, what? No, like you're showing up, you're being
Yeah.
active in a sport that makes you an athlete. You don't have to be a professional, you know.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, there's so much still gatekeeping, and either that's like active or just like how people experience it. I feel like still happens where like you can't call yourself this until you've achieved some level, or
Yeah, it's
until
most
you're
of it's in
running
our
this
own
pace.
heads.
Yeah.
In our
Right.
own heads. We're the ones gatekeeping ourselves a lot of the time. All right, we went on a whole tangent there, Ori. I didn't know that's where I loved it. That's where we're gonna go. So how did you find the ultra running world? Like what made you kind of go from because most people like they run, they become a road runner. How
Hmm.
did you find it trail and ultra running?
Yeah, trail running, I just kind of picked up more through, so I'm nomadic and just like in traveling,
Hmm.
it's like running in the Rockies, or like out and about, or like out here in Arizona. Um, so I was like, I definitely like more got into running as a road runner, and then trail running is just kind of like an additional way of running.
Hmm.
And then I don't really know. I think probably it was through like Rogers Park Run Club where I found out about more of these like ultra events.
Hmm.
And then like started listening to some ultra podcasts and kind of like finding out more about what was going on there. And I think once I did the marathon thing, a marathon for me, and I've only done road marathons, is like it's kind of like just a terrible distance. It's like it's short enough that you feel like you should be able to go fast and just like run it,
Hmm.
but it's long enough that you're still suffering.
Yeah, it's a misery.
Yeah. So after like doing those, I was like, I don't know how much I really want to do marathons anymore. I ultimately like did the Chicago this year because just kind of like doing the hometown one and getting to run for Parkinson's because my dad has Parkinson's. So just being able to like add some additional layer
Yeah.
of like meaning to it. Um, so yeah, ultras were just kind of like I can either run shorter and faster and get something out of that, like a goal there, or just
Mhm.
like see what the limits are of running far.
Yeah. I like that. I like that. What's been your favorite race or running experience thus far?
Um, I think the Chicago Marathon this year was my favorite. I think it was the first time where so the other two I did, one was like a small like Stony Creek, just north of Detroit, but it was
Okay.
just like small, you see people at aid stations and that's about it. You're just like
Hmm.
running loops around a lake. And then I did Honolulu, which
Hmm.
like was pretty good energy, but I just like blew up at mile 20 because
Yeah.
I went from Chicago in December to Honolulu,
Yeah.
um,
You're warmed
and
up a
was
lot
not
faster.
ready.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So and then Chicago like was when I was like, okay, I'm like actually going to take in the crowd, like experience it, and also like went out with a set goal in mind, and you know went out with purpose and was able to achieve that and felt like kind of just I don't know, it was just like a really like loving event for me. I don't know.
Yeah. What was your favorite neighborhood you ran through?
Um, Honestly, like coming through Chinatown was kind of cool. That felt like the most unique, where um just like a solid stretch. And at that point, like people were spread out a little bit more. Like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
you could
Yeah.
take in more of the crowd.
Yeah. Luckily, the marathon doesn't go through Rogers Park, so you're not going to hurt anybody's feelings by not saying Rogers Park.
Yes, right. Well,
You won't
that's
get
always my favorite. Yeah,
you won't get in trouble at all for that. Um,
I'd probably end up stopping at Rogers Park Social or
yeah,
something.
just feel
But
like I'm just going to stay up here.
yeah.
Um, I mean, I'm going to learn more about what this means for you, but how do you train with having a nomadic lifestyle, and what does that mean for you, having like being a nomad?
Mm. Um. Yeah, I mean, training is really just trying hard to stick to like an actual training plan, and
Hmm.
that means just running where you're at. Fortunately, like training for Chicago is kind of relatively simple. Like as long as it's like worst case scenario, you're training on flats, and
Yeah.
like Chicago is flat, so
Yeah.
it's fine.
Yeah.
Um, but otherwise, it would just be like and adjusting the miles. Maybe if it's like okay, I'm going to do trails or I'm going to
Hmm.
run up a mountain or something today, and it's not going to be the number of miles, but it's going to be like a good workout.
Yeah.
um that was actually pretty hard to stay diligent about in the past, being nomadic,
Hmm.
but this year I really like committed to it, and mainly I committed to it because not so much for like the training, but because if I don't run,
Hmm.
like I just get real cranky
Yeah.
and I'm not a lot of
Yeah.
fun to be around. So yeah, I just kind of would pick up the miles where I could. Yeah, nomadic wise, I mostly spent like the first part of this year in the West.
Hmm.
That's typically where I end up, just because it's easier to be nomadic out west
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
than
No, it is. Yeah.
so it's like a lot of like Colorado, California, Oregon, Washington,
Hmm.
Idaho.
First, I thought you said Ohio, and I was like, that's not right.
Oh,
Let me
yeah,
think about that. And you said Idaho. I was like, no,
yeah.
I knew it wasn't Ohio. That wasn't right. Man, I had a question and I lost it thinking about Ohio. Oh God, it was gonna be like a really great question too. Oh, I thought about it again. How is your relationship with running different than your relationship with the other sports that you participate in? I mean, you're doing ragbra. That's a really long bike ride, you know.
Mhm.
You're doing other endurance sports.
Yeah, I mean, to call ragbri an endurance sport is like
It's up
is
there.
pretty
Hey,
generous.
it's a
It
multi-day event.
it does take endurance, but ragbri is like just an amazing community and
Hmm.
party, and um I mean, that's like, it's the same thing with like ultra running. Like you go out there and it's like people of all types and
Yeah.
all bikes, and like, you're just trying to make it through, like beer stop to beer stop or pie
Yeah.
stop to pie stop, whatever you're out there to do. And it's just a like great time. You just chat with like 15,000 strangers, and it's
Yeah.
an amazing time. So to me, that's like, I do train for that, but I train for that so that the riding is easy and then everything else is fun.
Yeah.
Um, and then otherwise, like, you know, ice climbing is something I've gotten more passionate about in the past couple of years. And like this year, I'm committing like a full month to being like close to ice climbing. And
Hmm.
that is like something I'm actually training for, because, the leg endurance is good, but the arm endurance is not so
Yeah.
much.
Like the upper body strength. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, it's just like, it's the challenge. It's like pushing your limits and kind of figuring out what you can and can't do, and just being out in nature and enjoying it. Like, I don't know, there's not a lot of things that are more magical than going up a waterfall, a frozen
Yeah.
waterfall.
Yeah. I'm gonna just take your word on that one. I'm gonna leave the frozen waterfalls to you. I
Yeah.
love that for you. So what do you have coming up this coming year? Do you have a specific races you're going after?
I haven't signed up for anything yet. I think so. I'd like to do one or two hundreds. Likely one of those would be the Badger 100.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah.
Um, because that just feels like a good like entry 100.
Hmm.
Um, but I'm looking around at other ones. Maybe some, I don't know, like maybe New York Marathon.
Nice.
That I applied to like raise money for Parkinson's again. Um, yeah. Otherwise, I think just trying to get more into like the 50s and hundreds. I'd like to do 100 this next year.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Do you have like a big dream goal in terms of endurance? I mean, you're a nomad, so I can imagine like does the Appalachian Trail appeal to you as something to go for? Like what would be like a big dream goal in terms of that?
Yeah. I mean, certainly something like that would be awesome. I it's just like taking off that amount of time, which like, some
Logistically, I
days,
know. Yeah, it's
yeah.
a lot.
So, some days at work, I'm like, I could go take off a few months and do this. So yeah, I mean, I do think eventually I'd like to do something like that. I really want to cycle around the entire perimeter of Iceland. That's something
Oh,
I'm
rad.
trying to like find someone else crazy enough to do that with me. Which, yeah, I had a few bites, but no real takers yet. This next year, I do also plan to do like Grand Canyon rim to rim to rim. I've done the
Oh,
rim to rim
nice.
once, but to do the like double traverse is something I think I'll probably do in April. Um, yeah, I don't know. I mean, as far as like, I'd like to build up to like Leadville 100
Hmm.
in like 2025, maybe.
Yeah,
Um,
awesome. Solid,
Anything
solid
beyond
goals.
100, I don't know about.
You're like, do I
Yeah,
still want to do this? I don't
I
really
feel
know.
like, yeah, once I get to that 100, yeah, once I can do the 100 mark, then it's like, okay, well, maybe do something like a winter ultra, like push it in a different
Yeah.
degree instead of just going farther.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah. Push it to a different kind of suffering. I
yeah, like
support that.
250 just seems insane to me that
Yeah.
people are doing that.
Oh yeah, I know the distances of ultras and the popularity of the longer and longer distances. I mean, there has to be a cap to it at some point.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, there's that one in New York that what is it like the Transcendental 3100 or something where they just run a block around New York City
Oh,
basically all summer. I mean, I really don't
wow.
know how long it takes, but like they're just out there doing it. I'm like, oh, that's a
Yeah.
commitment I'm not in
Yeah.
for. But to each their own in their own
Yeah. That's a
suffering.
different type of suffering, the
um,
monotony.
you said something in the beginning, talking about getting into running and getting past the first 2 miles. And I think like people want to start running and don't realize that like it sucks and that
Yeah.
generally it sucks in the beginning for everybody and even for well-established runners the first mile is terrible and even the first
Hmm.
few like for me like I don't warm up until after 3 miles.
Hmm.
What advice would you have for someone that's like looking just to get into running now to get past that?
Hmm. I think it's like being really kind to yourself and
Hmm.
figuring out what's holding you back. So for me, like, it was partially physical, but it was mainly mental.
Hmm.
it was mainly like I'm too focused on the watch. Like I'm too focused on the some external marker. And for me, it was mileage. It was like I know that I'm going 2 miles. So like a quarter mile. Okay, like how many quarters do I have left? Okay, now I've done a half mile. How many halves? And like just all that math that's just like kind of occupying you the whole time. Um, and then once I was just like, you know what, like just go run and like don't look at your watch, don't care about how far you've gone, just like do it for yourself.
Hmm.
And then later, like, reflect on whether or not you enjoyed that. And it's like, yeah, I don't think there's like a one size fits all for everyone because I do think that there's different elements. And it may be like forgiving yourself for, being like, well, I know I used to be able to run this fast and now I can only run this fast. And it's like, well, run that fast then. And, like where people, I know a lot of people that like struggled recovering from COVID and it's like, well, I can't breathe like I used to. And it's like, yeah, but you can still go out and do your best. And like, you're not your same you, but you can be a new you.
Yeah. I love that. I felt like Mr. Rogers was talking to me just for a moment. It was like such a, like
Okay.
a calm mellow. I was like, yes, I'll take these affirmations. I'll take
Yeah.
them. Um, Man, I lost my other question because you were being so cool about Mr. Rogers. I edit out all this stuff where I sound really dumb. I sound way cooler once I edit out me just being
Okay.
like losing my thoughts along the
Yeah.
way.
Like some zany sound effects too.
Yeah, it's pretty common for me to lose my thoughts, and I'll just be like, oh,
Okay.
let's just take that whole sidebar out of here. Um, what have you found that you like most about the ultra running community? Because you've done a few now.
Yeah. So really mainly just the like last dot standing was a cool one to do because you're just running up and back and you're
Yeah, how
you're
long
gonna
is
just
that out and back that they did for that one?
it's 4.167 out and then
Oh,
4.167 back. So
nice.
it's like a campsite and a bar,
Oh,
which like
nice. Yeah,
you
yeah.
don't. I never ended up in the bar, but it was like a cold, rainy. It was
Yeah,
pretty.
yeah.
It
It
was
was
like
pretty
kind of
miserable
the
weather
the
this
worst
year.
weather. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but just like getting to chat with people along that, and also like pick people's brains about like what strategy are you using, like how are you doing these miles, because like it was my first time doing something like that. So I didn't, I just in marathons I just run the whole thing, like I don't do like run walks or anything like that. So this was like, no, like I'm gonna have to do some combination of running and walking at a certain point. um Actually like ended up running it with a woman that I went to high school with,
Oh,
which we didn't know until we're both out there and we're like, wait, are you from Downers Grove? And then they're like
that's
making the
hilarious.
connections because like she had a new name and everything like that. And it's like, oh, okay. Um, yeah, I think, and I think also just it felt like everyone views each other as very much equals, like on the same path. And that
Mhm.
like no matter how far or how many ultras someone's done, it's very welcoming. And um, you're commiserating over doing something dumb.
Yeah. You're commiserating over suffering,
Yeah. Yeah.
making this decision. This is something new that I'm interested in for people that don't, because I just assume the athletes I follow, everyone else follows and is inspired by, but I'm learning that that's not the truth. Is there athletes that you really like in the running or ultra running space that inspire you?
I think like the main people recently have been like the non-binary and trans
Mhm.
runners,
Yeah.
like Jake and Cal and Kay.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, like the elites are not really like as inspiring to me.
No.
There's a woman also, Callie, who's in Arizona, who just did like I think she just set the FKT on like the Cocodona
Oh, yeah.
250 or something like that.
Yeah.
Just like people like that,
People that
that
are just really just pushing themselves.
yeah, like they're not professionals per se. They're just people who are doing it because they want to be doing it.
Yeah, just like normal people, but they're still achieving like crazy stuff, which makes it seem
Yeah.
more achievable
Hmm.
for us other, average people. We'll say that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say
Yeah.
normal, but we'll say average.
Yeah.
Would you ever consider a transcon, when you go all the way across? I only say that because I feel like it goes along with your lifestyle, and your lifestyle would help you understand how to do that better than most people.
Yeah. I think like a bike version of it would feel
Mm.
more appealing. Running it, yeah, that sounds terrible. There's a guy right now, I don't know if you've seen him on Instagram, who's training to do, I think he's training to set the FKT on the Transcon.
Oh, wow.
They made a run like, I think he's been saying like 75 miles a day or something like that.
Oofed.
Um,
Oofed.
yeah.
You're like,
And I'm just like, I'm not, I
I'm
do
good.
not relate.
I'm good. I'm good. I hear you. I hear you. Well, Ori, I appreciate you coming on my podcast and chatting with me. I'm excited to follow you and see what you get into this coming year.
Yeah, thank you.
Uh,
And thank you for putting on your races. That was a lot of fun to do the fancy nonsense.
Yeah, you were a lot of fun each time you came to the aid station.
Yeah, yeah.
You were in such a good mood. And Craig was, of
Oh,
course, cheering you on.
yeah, yeah. I was trying to go out hard and like, race, like actually race against other people. And I definitely was humbled by the terrain and the mud and everything like that.
Yeah, yeah. You wouldn't expect that out of Chicago, that terrain
Yeah,
out there at Palos, but it does. It does humble some people for sure. It
yeah.
does.
So
You'll
maybe
have to
that'll be
come
one of my
back.
goals this next year. Yeah. Just train better for that.
Yeah, absolutely. We would love that, Ori. We would love that. Well, have a lovely evening.
Yeah, you too. Thank you so much.
Stop recording. There we go.